Okay guys, today we are dividing decimals, and the main rule that you have to remember is that you cannot have a decimal as a divisor in the problem. And the example is 1 8/10 divided by 3/10. The number that's on the outside is the divisor. That number cannot be a decimal. And the way that you do that, the way that you fix that, it seems really easy. We just move the decimal so many places to make it a whole number. But there's a reason behind why we do that, or how we get that far. What you're really doing is you're multiplying that number by 10, 100, 1,000, or so on. You're multiplying by a multiple of 10 in order to move that place value over. And the thing that you have to remember is however many places you move the decimal on the outside, how many places you move the decimal in the divisor, you move the decimal the same number of places in the dividend. So if we start out with 1 8/10 divided by 3/10, I have to make this a whole number. It has to be a whole number, no decimal. So I need to move this decimal one place, and I'm also going to do the same thing to the dividend. I'm going to move it one place. So my new problem becomes 18 divided by 3. And this is a pretty simple problem. Now, you've done these before, it's no big deal. 3 goes into 18 6 times. 6 times 3 is 18. You do the subtraction and you get a 0. You check, 0 is less than 3. There's nothing left to drop down, so you know your problem is finished. So your answer is 6. Your answer is also going to be 6 here. Now, when I move this decimal, it just goes straight up in the air right there. That's why this becomes an 18. So my answer is still going to be 6. Now, if you want to check, you know that 6 times 3 is 18. But are you positive that 3/10 times 6 equals 1 8/10? Well, let's try out and see. I have 0 and 3/10 times 6. 6 times 3 is 18. Carry the 1. 6 times 0 is 0. Plus 1 is 1. And I have one place after the decimal. No decimals here to count, so I'm going to go right there, and my answer is 1 8/10, which is exactly what I started with. These two numbers, when I multiply them together, I get what's on the inside, the same thing as this problem. So that's it. If you have more decimals, you move the place that many on the dividend and the divisor. If you start out with 3 45/100ths into 15 67/100ths, you have to multiply this really by 100. It's the same thing as moving the decimal 2 spots. You move it 2 spots here, and so your new problem is 345 into 1,567. Now, it gets a little bit complicated or tricky if, my marker's fading out, sorry about that, if I have 5 67/100ths and I only have 1 8/10 to divide into. Now, obviously, I have to move this 2 spaces. If the decimal's here, I have to move it 2 spots. But I don't have 2 spots here to move it. If I go 1 spot, I can move it a 2nd spot, but I have to do something very important. I have to add a 0 into that place. So just remember that. You always have to have a whole number on the outside, and you can add as many zeros as you need inside of that, and then the decimal would just go up. Your new problem would be 567 into 180. And once you do that, you realize that you can't make a group of 567 if you have 180. So you go back to when we divided decimals by whole numbers before, and you simply add a 0, but you do not move the decimal again. The decimal stays in the same place. So now it's the same thing as saying 567 into 1800. I'm going to pretend it doesn't exist. I've already moved it up to the top to my quotient. I won't move the decimal place again. Once you move it out here and you move it here the same number of places, don't touch it. Leave it alone. So you always have to have a whole number out here. You can add zeros in here. What about this? I don't want that zero. Let's say 5, 6, 7. So I want to say 567 thousandths divided by 3 6700ths. So I'm going to start out by moving my decimal 2 spots, and I'm going to move my decimal 2 spots here. So my new problem is going to be 367 into 5 6700ths. Well, you've got a decimal as the dividend, and that's okay. It's perfectly okay to have a decimal in the dividend because this decimal is just going to shoot up in the air just like Superman. He's going to stay right in that spot, and it's okay to have a decimal as a dividend. It's never okay to have a decimal as the divisor. So just remember that. However many spots you move it the same number of spots. If you end up with a decimal here, it's no problem. Don't worry about it. Okay, those are the basic rules. We've practiced these in class. We're going to continue practicing these. I encourage you to try practice problems. I will give you one to try out, see how you do. If you want to do it, great. If not, we'll work on it more in class, but I do encourage you to try them. So let's start out with 8 6700ths into 34 7200ths. So try that one out, see how you do. We'll work on it in class. It's 34 7200ths divided by 8 6700ths. Good luck. I'll see you in class.